Dr. Shea, you wrote an article about this, detailing Hungary's fight for sovereignty amidst this Russian-Ukrainian war. And one of the things that you recounted is a billboard that you had seen upon entering Hungary. Talk about that billboard.
Well, this billboard was everywhere, and I couldn't read it at first. And then finally, after a few days, I figured out that it was screaming, "No more sanctions." 97% of Hungarians that were polled said no more sanctions, meaning they don't support sanctions against Russia. And it's not because they love Russia. They were occupied by the Soviet Union for 46 years. It is simply because they're energy dependent on Russian oil and gas, like most of Europe has. And we've seen what these sanctions have done. We have weakened Europe with these sanctions. We have driven Russia into the arms of China with these sanctions. So we've had a lot of bad ramifications, but it has not pushed Putin back at all. These sanctions haven't worked. But I wrote this article to point out that Hungary has the sovereignty as an EU member state to say no. And the reason that I thought that this was important is because our government is antagonizing Hungary right now. We have an ambassador from the US, David Pressman, that is over there comparing Hungary with Putin on a daily basis, calling them out for human rights abuses. And if you walk back, what he means by this, David Pressman is a gay man married to a guy with 2 children living there in Hungary. If you walk this back to his confirmation hearing and what the Biden administration is doing, they're calling Hungary a human rights abuser because they don't want LGBT curriculum in their schools, which is something that the EU has tried to force upon them. They are a democratic country with a parliamentary system. Their prime minister was just elected fairly, 4th consecutive time in a landslide victory. It's a conservative nation.
How ironic and bold that the Biden administration would call Hungary a human rights violator, and
Yes.
they remain mum about atrocities happening in China.
Oh, Chanel, that's something we could talk about for a long time. That's absolutely right.
Now, Hungary is a fascinating case here, too, especially when it comes to any conversation about this Russian-Ukraine war. Mm-hmm. They have actually received, over 1 million refugees from Ukraine. I mean, they've been humanitarian partners here.
Yes, it's like 1.5 million Ukrainian refugees. I've been in the Ukrainian Refugee Center in Hungary.
Right.
It is elaborate. It even takes in dogs and cats to care for them. They've spent, I would say, most likely billions on it. They won't say because they say this is a humanitarian situation. Sure. It's not. But you know something, Chanel, that I want to point out. I was in Hungary about a month ago, and I was interviewing different Hungarians on a book I'm writing about national sovereignty in the EU. Ordinary people, but also I interviewed cabinet ministers, Minister of Culture, Minister of Justice. What I was really struck by is that they were very startled. They'd tell me they were so surprised at the rhetoric coming out of the United States because, I quote, "It reminds them of the Soviet era."
Which was not long ago for them.
Not long ago for them. So in my way of thinking, they cling so hard to their sovereignty because they fought for their sovereignty. They fought to push the Soviet Union out. In 1991 is about when it happened. Our freedom, we don't remember what it's like to not be free. We've been free for over 200 years. And so I think this is one reason that they cling so hard to their sovereignty.
It's certainly a fascinating perspective, and one that is not highlighted just because they are a powerful nation in a body of EU voices that really don't want to see their point of view.
That's right.
Dr. Shea, thank you for your insight.